The Grand Hall of the Galactic Concord was the largest structure ever built by intelligent life. It floated in the darkness between stars, a massive ring of metal and light, where 847 species came together to govern the galaxy. Millions of beings filled its seats, arranged in circles that rose toward a ceiling so high it vanished into shadow. At the center sat the Council, the 5 oldest species, the ones who had ruled since before most civilizations learned to make fire. Admiral Woojin Park stood at the edge of the human section and looked at that ceiling. He was a tall man, with gray hair and calm eyes. He had commanded fleets in 3 wars, but he had never felt as small as he did in this place. The human delegates sat in the outermost ring, in the worst seats, near the doors where the air was cold and the speakers barely worked. This was their assigned place. The place for children. Humanity had been part of the assembly for 200 years. In galactic terms, this was nothing. Some species here had been members for 50,000 years. They looked at humans the way a grandfather might look at a crawling baby, except there was no love in their eyes, only amusement, only contempt. Ambassador Hana Yoon sat beside Woojin. She was younger than him, with sharp eyes and a patient smile that never quite reached them. She had spent her entire career trying to earn respect from beings who would never give it. Today, she would try again. "They are laughing at us," said Captain Jinho Lee. He was the youngest of the delegation, a military officer with a scar on his cheek from a battle the Concorde had ignored. "I can hear them." He was right. From the lower rings, alien sounds drifted upward. Clicks and whistles and rumbles that the translation devices turned into words. Words like primitive and aggressive and mistake. The other species did not bother to hide their feelings. Why would they? Humans were nothing here. Elder Minho Kang, the oldest member of the delegation, placed a wrinkled hand on Jinho's arm. "Let them laugh," he said quietly. Laughter is the sound of those who do not understand danger. Before Jinho could respond, a deep tone echoed through the hall. The session was beginning. High Arbiter Velcross, the leader of the council, rose from his seat at the center of the great circle. He was a reptilian creature, tall and covered in green scales, with eyes like yellow glass. His species had ruled the Concorde for 12,000 years. He believed this made him wise. He believed this made him better than everyone else. "We gather today to discuss a matter of minor concern," Velcross announced, his voice carrying through the hall. "A disturbance in the outer rim. A possible threat. The human delegation has requested time to speak. Possible threat." Woojin felt his jaw tighten. He had seen the reports. He knew what was coming. Ambassador Hana rose from her seat. She walked down the long steps toward the speaking platform, her footsteps echoing in the sudden quiet. A few species turned to watch. Most did not bother. "Honored members of the Concorde," Hana began, her voice steady. 3 weeks ago, our deep space sensors detected movement at the edge of explored territory. We have now confirmed the nature of this movement." She touched a control, and a hologram appeared above the platform. It showed darkness. Then, within that darkness, something moved. Shapes. Thousands of them. Millions. A swarm of organic vessels, each one larger than a city. Each one filled with hunger that could not be satisfied. "The void swarm has returned," Hana said. The hall went silent. Real silence. The kind that happens when fear touches every heart at once. The void swarm. The galaxy's oldest nightmare. A living armada that consumed everything in its path. Planets. Stars. Entire civilizations. It had appeared 3 times in recorded history. Each time, it had destroyed hundreds of worlds before vanishing into the dark between galaxies. It was supposed to be gone. It was supposed to be extinct. "You are certain?" asked Speaker Myrath, an insectoid being from one of the middle-tier species. Her voice trembled slightly. "We are certain," Hana replied. The swarm's current path will bring it to the outer rim colonies within 30 cycles. 12 human worlds lie directly in its path. 4 billion of our people. She paused, letting the number sink in. 4 billion. A number too large to understand. 4 billion lives, waiting to be devoured. The Galactic Concord exists for moments like this, Hana continued. The Mutual Defense Pact binds us together. When one species faces extinction, all species respond. We have honored this pact every time it was invoked. When the Myrith homeworld faced asteroid bombardment, human ships were first to arrive. When the Velcross colonies suffered plague, human doctors worked without rest for 3 years. She looked directly at High Arbiter Velcros. We have given everything we could give, whenever we were asked. Now, we are asking. Send the combined fleet. Help us stop the swarm before it reaches our worlds. Help us save our people. The hall remained quiet. Wu Jin watched the faces of the council members. He saw calculation in their eyes. He saw cold mathematics. He saw something that made his blood turn to ice. He saw indifference. High Arbiter Velcros waved a clawed hand. The council will consider your request, he said, in a tone that suggested he had already decided. However, I must note that the human colonies are very far from the core systems. The journey would require significant resources. Perhaps it would be wiser for humanity to handle this matter alone. Alone? Hana's voice cracked for just a moment. That is not possible. No single species can. Your time is finished. Velcros interrupted. Return to your seat. The council will discuss. Hana stood frozen for a moment. Then, slowly, she turned and walked back up the stairs. As she passed Wu Jin, he saw something he had never seen in her eyes before. Fear. Not for herself. For everyone. Elder Minho watched the council begin their discussion. He had lived for 97 years. He remembered Earth before first contact. He remembered when humans thought they were alone in the universe. They are going to abandon us, he said quietly. I can see it in their eyes. Wu Jin nodded. Yes, they are. The old man looked at him. And what will we do then? Wu Jin did not answer, but his hand, hidden beneath the table, slowly curled into a fist. 3 days passed. 3 days of waiting, of hoping, of watching the swarm grow closer, on every sensor screen. 3 days of silence from the council. On the 4th day, the grand hall filled again. Every seat was taken. Every eye turned toward the center platform, where High Arbiter Velcro stood with the other council members. The air felt heavy, thick with tension that pressed against the skin like a weight. Admiral Wu Jin Park led the human delegation to their seats in the outer ring. He walked slowly, his back straight, his face calm. Inside, his heart was pounding. He had spent 30 years in the military. He had faced death more times than he could count. But this was different. This was not battle. This was judgment. Ambassador Hana Yun sat beside him. She had not slept in 3 days. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, but her hands were steady. She had done everything she could. She had spoken to every delegate who would listen. She had begged. She had reasoned. She had promised anything. Everything. If they would just help. Most had not even responded to her messages. The council has reached a decision, High Arbiter Velcros announced. His yellow eyes swept across the hall, pausing briefly on the human section. Was that a smile on his lips? Wu Jin could not tell. We will now hold a formal vote on the human request for military assistance against the Void Swarm. Captain Jinho Lee leaned forward. Maybe we were wrong, he whispered. Maybe they will help. Elder Minho Kang shook his head slowly. Look at their faces, young one. They have already decided. This vote is only theater. The voting began. One by one, species announced their positions. The first 10 voted against. Then 20. Then 50. The numbers climbed, like a rising tide of abandonment. The Velcros Federation votes against intervention. Resources must be preserved for core world defense. The Myrith Collective abstains. We cannot risk our ships on such a distant mission. The Thornax Empire votes against. The Swarm may be satisfied with the Outer Rim. We should not provoke it. Hana listened to each vote, her face growing paler with every word. 4 billion people. 4 billion human lives. And species after species was choosing to let them die. Lieutenant Subin Choi, the communications officer aboard the human flagship orbiting the station, was watching the vote through a video feed. She sat in her chair on the bridge of the Indomitable, surrounded by officers who had stopped working to stare at the screen. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. They just watched as the galaxy abandoned them. The vote continued for 2 hours. When it finally ended, High Arbiter Velcros stood and read the results in a voice that held no emotion. 831 species have voted against intervention. 12 species have abstained. 4 species have voted in favor. He paused, his eyes finding the human delegation. The motion for military assistance is denied. Humanity will face the Void Swarm alone. The hall was quiet for a moment. Then, slowly, sounds began to rise. Clicks, and whistles, and rumbles. Laughter. The other species were laughing. Wujin felt something cold settle in his chest. Not anger. Not yet. Something deeper. Something older. A feeling that his ancestors had known, long ago, when they faced predators in the darkness, and realized that no one was coming to help. High Arbiter Velcros was not finished. He raised one clawed hand for silence, and the laughter faded. I wish to add a personal observation, he said, his voice carrying through the hall. Humanity has been a member of this Concord for 200 years. In that time, they have contributed little of value. Their technology is primitive. Their culture is aggressive. Their presence here has been, frankly, an embarrassment. He spread his claws in a gesture that might have been a shrug. Perhaps nature is correcting a mistake. Perhaps the swarm is simply doing what evolution intended, removing a species that was never meant to reach the stars. Silence. Complete silence. Even the laughter had stopped. Ambassador Hana rose from her seat. Her legs were shaking, but she forced them to hold. She walked down the stairs, step by step, until she stood at the speaking platform. Her translation device was still active. Every being in the hall could hear her words. Is this the official position of the Galactic Concord? She asked. Her voice did not shake. Her hands did not tremble. She had spent every drop of her strength on this moment. Is this what you truly believe? Velcro smiled. It was an ugly expression on his reptilian face. It is the truth, Ambassador. Humanity is not ready for the galaxy. Perhaps, in a few million years, if your species survives, you might evolve into something worthy of this hall. Until then, you are simply enough. The word was quiet, but it cut through the air like a blade. Elder Minho Kang had risen from his seat. He was old, so old that his bones creaked when he moved. But his voice was strong. His eyes were clear. He looked across the hall. 847 species. Millions of beings. Civilizations that had existed before humanity learned to write. They all stared back at him. You have forgotten what we are, he said. Velcros laughed. And what are you, old human? What could you possibly be that we should fear? Minho did not answer. He simply turned to look at Admiral Wujin. Their eyes met. Something passed between them. An understanding. A decision. Wujin nodded. Then, he reached up, unclipped his translation device, and dropped it on the table. The small machine clattered against the surface, suddenly loud, in the quiet hall. Ambassador Hana watched him. Then, slowly, she understood. She removed her own device and let it fall. Captain Jinho was next. Then Elder Minho. Then every other human in the delegation, 32 translation devices, dropped onto tables and floors. The sound echoed through the grand hall like the tolling of a bell. "What are you doing?" Velcros demanded. "Pick those up immediately. You cannot simply—" The humans were not listening. They were standing. All of them. Together. Rising from their seats. And they began to walk. They did not run. They did not shout. They walked, calmly and quietly, toward the great doors at the edge of the hall. Their footsteps echoed in the silence. Speaker Myrith watched them go. Her antennae twitched. Something was wrong. Something she could not name. A feeling she had not experienced in centuries. Fear. Ambassador Hana was the last to reach the doors. She paused, her hand on the ancient metal. Then she turned and looked back at the assembly. "We asked for nothing we had not already given freely," she said. Her voice was steady. Her eyes were dry. "Remember that. When you write your histories." The doors opened. The humans walked through. The doors closed behind them. And the grand hall of the Galactic Concord, for the first time in 12,000 years, fell completely silent. The silence lasted for exactly 47 seconds. In the history of the Galactic Concord, this was the longest period of complete quiet ever recorded. Not a single being spoke. Not a single claw clicked. Not a single claw clicked. Not a single wing rustled. Then High Arbiter Velcros laughed. It was a harsh sound, sharp and dismissive. He waved one scaled hand toward the closed doors. "Let them sulk," he said. "They will return within a cycle. Where else can they go? They are primitive. Weak. They cannot survive without us." Some of the other species joined his laughter. It spread through the hall like ripples on dark water. Soon, the normal sounds of the assembly returned. The clicking and whistling and rumbling of 846 remaining civilizations, going about their business as if nothing had happened. But not everyone was laughing. In the highest seats, at the very back of the hall, sat the eldest species of all. They were so old that even the council looked young beside them. They had watched galaxies form. They had seen empires rise and fall across millions of years. They rarely spoke at assembly meetings. They simply observed. One of these ancient beings turned to its companion. It was a creature of light and shadow, its form shifting like smoke and wind. Its voice was like the whisper of dying stars. "The wolves are leaving the fold," it said, "and we just told them we are sheep." Its companion, a being made of crystalline structures that hummed with strange energy, flickered in response. "They are only humans. Young. Inexperienced. What can they do?" The first creature did not answer. But if it had a face, it would have shown something like worry. Aboard the human flagship Indomitable, Lieutenant Subin Choi was the first to see the delegation arrive. She stood at the hangar bay doors, watching as the shuttle landed and the ramp descended. Admiral Woojin Park was first to step out. "Sir," Subin saluted. "What are your orders?" Woojin walked past her without stopping. His footsteps rang on the metal floor. "Signal all human vessels in conquered space. All of them. Every ship. Every station. Every outpost." Subin hurried to keep up with him. "What should I tell them?" "Tell them to go dark. Complete communications blackout. Then set course for Seoul. We are going home." "Home?" Subin's voice cracked. "Sir, the swarm is coming. If we retreat to Seoul, the outer colonies have already been evacuated." Woojin stopped and turned to face her. His eyes were calm, but something burned behind them, something she had never seen before. "The evacuation began 3 weeks ago, the moment we knew the Concorde would abandon us. We can see of her. Abandon see of her. We can see of her. The evacuation began 3 weeks. Subin stared at him. 3 weeks? But that is impossible. 4 billion people. The transport capacity alone is more than anyone knows. Wu Jin started walking again. Send the signal. Lieutenant, tell our people to come home. It is time to stop pretending. Subin did not understand. But she was a soldier. She followed orders. She ran to the communications center and began transmitting. Across the galaxy, the signal spread like fire. 4,000 human ships received the message. 4,000 captains read the same words. Go dark. Return to Sol. Prepare for revelation. One by one, the ships powered down their civilian transponders. They stopped broadcasting their positions. They stopped responding to Concord communication attempts. And then, silently, they began to move. The Concord noticed. How could they not? 4,000 ships, disappearing from their sensors at once. Alarms rang on monitoring stations across 100 systems. Officials sent urgent messages to the human delegation, demanding explanations. There were no answers. The humans were gone. All of them. Every ship, every station, every trader and diplomat and worker. They had vanished, like ghosts, in the night. High Arbiter Velcros received the reports in his private chamber. He read them with growing irritation. Find them, he ordered his aides. They cannot have gone far. Track their jump signatures. Locate their fleet. The aides worked for hours. When they returned, their scales had gone pale with confusion. High Arbiter, one of them said. We have analyzed the jump signatures. They are unusual. Unusual how? They are faster than our records indicate human drives should be capable of. Much faster. The aide hesitated. At this speed, their fleet would reach Sol in less than a week. That should be impossible. Velcros felt something cold touch his spine. He ignored it. A sensor error, he said. Human technology is primitive. Everyone knows this. Correct the data and try again. But the data did not change. And deep in the back of his mind, in a place he refused to examine, Velcros began to wonder if he had made a terrible mistake. In the grand hall, Speaker Myrith sat alone in her section. The other members of her species had already left. She remained, staring at the spot where the humans had walked out. She remembered something. A small thing. A moment from many years ago. Her colony had faced a disaster. A disease that their medicine could not cure. They had asked the Concord for help. And the Concord had sent committees and studies and endless debate. Meanwhile, her people died by the thousands. Then, a human ship arrived. It was small, barely larger than a shuttle. The captain was a young woman with dark hair and tired eyes. She had heard about the plague. She had come without orders, without permission, with nothing but a cargo hold full of medical supplies and a message. We are here to help. The humans had saved Myrith's colony. They asked for nothing in return. When Myrith tried to thank them, the captain had simply smiled and said, "This is what neighbors do." Myrith had never forgotten. And now, watching the empty seats where the humans once sat, she understood something the others did not. The humans had not walked out because they were weak. They had walked out because they were done. Done asking. Done begging. Done pretending to be harmless. Myrith's antennae trembled. She remembered the human captain's eyes. Tired. Yes. Kind. Yes. But behind the kindness, there had been something else. Something that burned like a controlled fire. She wondered if the galaxy was about to see that fire unleashed. And for the first time in her long life, Speaker Myrith prayed to gods she did not believe in that she was wrong. In the darkness between stars, 4,000 human ships moved in perfect formation. They did not use standard shipping lanes. They did not follow approved routes. They cut straight through empty space, their engines burning with a light that should not have been possible. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Wu Jin stood and watched the stars streak past. Ambassador Hana stood beside him. "They will come after us," Hana said. "When they realize we are not coming back, they will try to bring us back." Wujin shook his head. "How can you be sure? Because when they see what comes next, they will be too afraid to move." Hana looked at him. For a moment, she saw the man she had known for 20 years, the calm and patient diplomat who always believed in peace. Then that man faded, and she saw someone else, someone older, someone harder, someone who had been waiting for this moment his entire life. "What have we been hiding, Wujin?" she asked quietly. The Admiral smiled. It was not a kind expression. "Everything," he said. "We have been hiding everything." 3 weeks after the humans walked out of the assembly, the Void Swarm arrived at the outer rim. The Concorde watched through long-range sensors. Millions of beings across thousands of worlds turned their eyes to the displays, waiting to witness the death of humanity. High Arbiter Velcros sat in his command center, surrounded by advisors, a glass of wine in his clawed hand. He was smiling. Soon, the human problem would solve itself. Nature would correct its mistake. Just as he had said, the swarm descended on the first human colony world. It was a planet called New Busan, home to 300 million people. The swarm's organic vessels blocked out the sun as they approached. Their hunger was endless. Their appetite was death. Then the swarm stopped. Velcros leaned forward. "What is happening? Show me the planet." The sensors zoomed in. New Busan hung in space, blue and green and beautiful. The swarm surrounded it like a cloud of nightmares. But nothing was happening. The organic vessels were not attacking. They were just waiting. "Scan for life signs," Velcros ordered. The technicians worked. Their faces went pale. One of them turned to the High Arbiter, with eyes full of confusion. "The planet is empty." "High Arbiter. No human life signs detected." "Empty? That is impossible. 300 million people. Gone. All of them. The cities are still there. The buildings, the vehicles, everything. But the people are gone." Velcros stood. His wine glass fell from his hand and shattered on the floor. "Check the other colonies. All 12 of them." Now, the technicians checked. The results were the same. Every human colony world in the path of the swarm was empty. 4 billion people had vanished. Their cities stood silent. Their ships were gone. It was as if they had never existed. "How is this possible?" an advisor whispered. "Evacuating 4 billion people in 3 weeks? No species in the galaxy can move that many, that fast. Not even all our fleets combined could accomplish this." Velcros did not answer. His mind was racing. Something was very wrong. Something he had not expected. Something he had not prepared for. Then the sensors screamed. The technicians jumped back from their screens as alarms filled the room. Red lights flashed. Warning messages scrolled across every display. "What is it?" Velcros demanded. "What is happening?" "What?" A technician pointed at the main screen with a trembling claw. "Ships. High Arbiter." Ships appearing at the edge of the system. Many ships. The swarm. No. The screen changed. It showed the darkness beyond the empty human worlds. And in that darkness, something was emerging. Ships. But not like any ships the Concorde had ever seen. They were massive, each one the size of a small moon. Their hulls gleamed with unknown metals. Their weapons glowed with energy that made the sensors burn, just trying to measure it. More ships appeared. Then more. Then more. Velcros counted. 10,000. 20,000. 30,000. 40,000 vessels, a technician whispered. All human design. All unknown class. High Arbiter. Our records show humans only have 4,000 ships. Your records are wrong. The voice came from every speaker in the room at once. It was calm, It was familiar. Admiral Woojin Park appeared on the main screen. He stood on the bridge of a ship so large that the Indomitable could have fit inside it 100 times. Behind him, officers worked at stations covered in technology that the Concorde had never imagined. "Hello, High Arbiter," Woojin said. "I thought you might want to watch." Commander Yuna Song stood at the tactical station, her fingers dancing across holographic controls. She had spent 20 years preparing for this moment. Every simulation, every battle plan, every secret weapon that humanity had hidden from the galaxy. It all came down to now. "Fleet status?" Admiral Woojin asked. "All ships in position. Weapons charged. The swarm has detected us. They are turning to engage." Woojin nodded. "Then let us show the galaxy what they should have feared." The human fleet moved. It did not creep forward like normal vessels. It lunged. Engines that should not exist pushed ships at speeds that broke every law the Concorde thought it knew. The 40,000 vessels spread across space like the fingers of a giant hand, reaching for the swarm. The swarm responded. Millions of organic vessels surged toward the humans. They had destroyed civilizations. They had consumed worlds. They feared nothing. They should have feared this. The first human weapons fired. They were not lasers. They were not missiles. They were something new, something terrible. Beams of pure white light cut through the swarm like fire through paper. Where the beams touched, organic vessels simply ceased to exist. Not exploded, not burned. Erased. Dr. Taehyun Baek watched from the science vessel at the rear of the fleet. He had spent his entire career building these weapons. For 200 years, humanity had hidden them. For 200 years, they had pretended to be primitive, to be weak, to be harmless. It had all been a lie. Why? Ensign Ji Won-han asked. She was young, barely 20 years old. She had grown up believing the stories the Concorde told about humans. Now she watched those stories burn. Why did we hide? Why did we pretend? Dr. Taehyun looked at her with tired eyes. Because the galaxy was not ready. The other species, they are old. They are afraid of change. If they had known what we could do, they would have tried to destroy us before we grew strong. But we were strong. We could have beaten them. Yes. But beating them was never the point. The doctor turned back to his screens. We wanted to be part of something larger. We wanted allies, not subjects. So we hid. We waited. We hoped they would accept us for what we were, not fear us for what we could be. Ji-won was silent for a moment. They failed the test. Yes, they failed. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the void swarm was gone. Not defeated. Not driven back. Annihilated. Every single organic vessel had been destroyed. A threat that had terrorized the galaxy for millions of years had been erased in less than a day by a species that everyone thought was weak. Across the Concorde, terror spread like a plague. Species that had laughed at humans now locked their doors and powered up their defenses. Leaders who had mocked human technology now stared at reports that made their blood run cold. In his command center, High Arbiter Velcross sat alone. His advisors had fled. His guards had abandoned their posts. He stared at the screen showing the human fleet, now floating peacefully in the space where the swarm had died. An aide crept into the room. He was young, barely past his first molting. His voice trembled as he spoke. High Arbiter, I have a question. Velcross did not turn. Ask, if the humans could do this. If they had this power all along, why did they ask for our help? Why did they need the Concorde at all? Aft. And why did they need the Concorde at all? Velcross closed his eyes. The answer came to him like a knife sliding between his ribs. They were not asking for protection, he whispered. They were giving us a chance to prove we were worth protecting. The aide was silent for a long moment. Then, he asked the question that every being in the galaxy was now thinking. What happens now? Velcross had no answer. For the first time in 12,000 years, His species had no answer at all. 6 months passed. The galaxy changed. The Galactic Concord, which had stood united for 12,000 years, began to crack. Species turned against each other. Accusations flew like weapons. Everyone wanted someone to blame for what had happened. High Arbiter Velcros was removed from his position in disgrace. His own people cast him out, terrified that the humans might hold them responsible for his words. He spent his final days in a small room, watching news reports about the chaos he had helped create. The humans did not respond to any communication attempts. Their borders were sealed with weapons platforms that made the Concord's mightiest warships look like toys. Any vessel that approached too close received a single warning. Those that did not turn back simply vanished. Fear became the new currency of the galaxy. Species that had stood together for thousands of years now viewed each other with suspicion. If humanity could hide such power, who else might be hiding something? Trust, already fragile, shattered completely. In the highest chamber of the Grand Hall, the eldest species finally spoke. They had watched in silence for eons. Now, they had no choice but to act. The being of light and shadow addressed the assembly. Its voice echoed through the empty seats, where so many had once gathered. Fewer came to meetings now. Everyone was afraid. "We must tell you the truth," the ancient being said. "Humanity is not unique. Every few million years, a species emerges with potential beyond all others. We call them apex inheritors. They are destined to shape the fate of the galaxy, for good or for destruction." Speaker Myrith sat in the front row, one of the few who still attended. "Why did you not warn us?" she demanded. "We tried. Thousands of years ago, we told the Council to treat emerging species with respect, to nurture them, to earn their loyalty." The ancient being flickered with something like sadness. They did not listen. They were too proud, too certain of their own superiority. "What do the apex inheritors usually do?" an ambassador from a minor species asked. His voice shook with fear. "That depends on how they are treated. Some become protectors. Some become destroyers. Some simply leave, never to return." The Concord's treatment of humanity was a test, though you did not know it. A test to see if you were worthy of the future they could have given you. Myrith closed her eyes. "And we failed." "Yes." Silence fell over the hall. 100 species, representatives of civilizations that had existed before humans learned to make fire, sat in shame and terror. They had been the masters of the galaxy. Now they waited like children for judgment. Then the screens came alive. Ambassador Hana Yoon appeared on every display in the Grand Hall. She stood alone against a backdrop of stars. Her face was calm. Her voice was steady. The entire galaxy was watching. "People of the Concord," she began, "we have heard your messages, your apologies, your pleas for mercy. We have discussed what to do with you for many months now." Every being in the hall held their breath. "We asked for allies and found none. We offered friendship and received contempt. We saved your galaxy while you laughed at our deaths." Hana paused. "We could burn your worlds. We have the power. We could enslave your species. We have the ships. We could become the monsters you always feared we were." The fear in the hall was so thick it could be touched. "But that is not who we are." Hana's expression softened, just slightly. "We did not survive our own worst impulses to become what we once hated. We learned, long ago, that vengeance is a poison. It destroys the one who drinks it more than the one it is meant for." She took a breath. "We will not rejoin your Concord. We will never trust your promises again. But neither will we be your executioners. Instead, we offer a choice. 3. We will not rejoin your Concord. We will not rejoin your Concord. Instead, we offer a choice." A new image appeared beside her. A symbol. A a circle of stars surrounding two clasped hands. We are forming a new alliance. The Human Compact. Any species that wishes may petition to join us. You will be judged not by your age or your power, but by your actions. Those who prove worthy will be protected. Those who prove false will be removed. And those who choose to remain with the Concord will be left to their own fate. The image faded. Hana looked directly into the camera, and every being watching felt as if she was looking at them personally. Choose wisely, she said. This is the only offer you will receive. The transmission ended. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then, slowly, the first hand rose. It was Speaker Myrith. Her antennae were trembling, but her voice was clear. I petition to join the Human Compact, she said. More hands rose. Species that humanity had helped. Long ago. The small ones. The forgotten ones. The ones who remembered kindness when it was not required. Within a year, 30 species had joined the Compact. They were treated as equals. Their voices mattered. Their concerns were heard. It was everything the Concord had promised, but never delivered. The Concord itself grew weaker with each passing month. Without the threat of the swarm, old rivalries resurfaced. Species that had pretended to be allies now fought over resources and territory. The great civilization began to crumble from within. On Earth, in a garden filled with flowers from a dozen worlds, Elder Minho Kang sat on a bench and watched the sunset. He was very old now. His hands shook when he lifted his teacup, but his eyes were still clear, and his mind was still sharp. A group of young cadets stood before him. They wore the uniform of the Compact Fleet. Tomorrow, they would ship out to the new frontier to protect the species that had chosen to trust humanity. One of the cadets, a young woman with curious eyes, raised her hand. Sir, may I ask a question? Mingyu smiled. Of course. Do you think the Concord deserved what happened to them? The fear? The collapse? Minho considered the question. He had lived for 99 years. He had seen humanity at its worst and at its best. He had watched his people rise from the ashes of old wars to build something new. Deserve? He shook his head slowly. Perhaps not. They made mistakes, as all beings do. They let fear and pride blind them to simple truths. He looked up at the stars, appearing in the darkening sky. But they made a choice. And choices have consequences. Our ancestors learned that the hard way. Fire, war, plague. We nearly destroyed ourselves a dozen times. He turned to face the cadets. The galaxy forgot that pain shapes wisdom. They grew soft behind their ancient walls. They believed their age made them strong. But age without growth is just stagnation. He smiled. Just slightly. We never had that luxury. We had to earn our survival every single day, every generation, every moment. The young woman nodded slowly. Is that why they should have feared us? Because we struggled? No. Minho's eyes grew distant, remembering battles fought long before these children were born. They should have feared us because we never gave up. Not once. Not ever. We faced our own demons and survived. We looked into the darkness inside ourselves and chose to be better. He set down his teacup and looked at each cadet in turn. The other species have power. They have technology. They have numbers. But they do not have what we have. They do not have will. The will to change. The will to grow. The will to stand up after every fall and try again. He leaned forward. That is what they should have feared. Not our weapons, not our ships, our will. The cadets were silent, absorbing his words. Far across the galaxy, in a system that no Concord map had ever recorded, a small planet orbited a young star. On that planet, beings were building their first radio telescope. They were curious. They were hopeful. They wondered if anyone else was out there. Their first signal rose into the sky and spread outward. A simple message, A greeting. Is anyone there? The signal traveled through the void for many hours. It passed through empty space, where the void swarm had once lurked. It crossed territories that the Concorde claimed, but never visited. Finally, it reached the edge of human space. A small patrol vessel intercepted the transmission. The captain, a woman named Ji-Young Kim, read the translation on her screen. She smiled. "Signal command," she said. "Tell them we found another one." She looked out at the stars, at the vast and dangerous galaxy that had once tried to break her people. Then she set a course for the little planet with the radio telescope. The cycle was beginning again. But this time, things would be different. This time, the newcomers would be welcomed. They would be protected. They would be given a chance that humanity had never received. Because that was the lesson. That was the truth the Concorde had forgotten. Kindness was not weakness. Mercy was not surrender. And the strongest thing in the universe was not a weapon, or a fleet, or an ancient empire. It was a hand extended in friendship to those who had no one else. And humanity would never stop extending that hand, no matter how many times it had been slapped away. Because that was who they were. That was who they chose to be. And that, in the end, was why the galaxy learned to both fear and love them.